Okay. Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about one of the most favorite genre in popular literature, which is gothic fiction. First of all, what is gothic fiction? Gothic fiction, also known as gothic horror, is literature of genre that combine fiction and horror and death, and also sometimes also includes romance story on it. And Gothic itself is referred to medieval European architecture of 12th century and to 16th century. And in 17th century, the first novel of Gothic fiction was published, which is called as The Castle of Otranto. Otranto, and this novel also wrote by Horace Walpole. And after the publish of this novel, um, the readers um, they like to learn more about the Gothic fiction. And after the publisher also in 18th century, Gothic fiction was developed by four features, which is very important. First is Clara Reeve and Radcliffe, William Thomas Beckford, and Matthew Lewis. And after the development of codification in 19th century, codification is become more popular. There's so many popular authors like to create the new works with Gothic genre. And also until today, Gothic genre is still popular and one of the most popular author in this day is Stephen King and so on. And right now I'm going to talking about the element of Gothic literature. Element of Gothic literature have six elements. First is dark settings, plot conventions, horror, supernatural beings, anti-heroes, and themes. First of all is dark settings. We can see that in Gothic literature, dark setting is, of course, like one of the uniqueness of Gothic itself. Why? Because we can see that most of Gothic literature are related with dark settings, some kind like a haunted house, abandoned house, and then many places that related with some kind like a spookiness. And the second is plot convention. Plot convention is talking about, of course, the plot of the story, and the plot of the story is quite interesting because the this for me is the plot is give you intense more because the plot is related with thriller, revenge, or maybe um, ghosts and mythology creatures, some of that. And some of the Gothic literature is they're putting the past as the to relate the present problem, the present circumstance. For example, like the story is revisiting the past to retell the story why this problem can happen on the present. Therefore, some Gothic literature is portraying visiting past as dead blood. Next is horror. I can tell that horror is one of the most, I mean, like not one of the most, is the most important part element in Gothic literature. Why? Because in Gothic literature, it it has a goal, right? to make the reader or the audience feel the intense by watching or reading the story. And most of the horror is related with something like a get you the feeling of fear and dread and many more that can make you goosebumps, something like that. And next is supernatural being. Supernatural being is I think is mostly supernatural being is the antagonist in Korean literature. Why? Because supernatural being is physically represent the creature or mostly like a mythology creature. For example, like a ghost, monster, zombie, vampires, witch, and so on that related with creepy creature. And yes, of course, this creature can make this creature can make the story of the movies even better. It can make the movies more interesting. And next is anti-heroes. Anti-heroes is I can tell that this the typical of protagonist in Gothic literature. Why? Because mostly in Gothic literature is represent the protagonist as just a regular person, just an ordinary people like we, and we have to show our ability to express our ability to solve the problem. Therefore, this typical of characters make the movie or the stories even better. Like we can imagine that we have the same circumstance with the character in the story. And this is the last one. The last one is themes. Themes is, of course, we when we're talking about themes is related with the main idea of the story, right? The main idea of the Gothic literature is mostly like a curse, revenge, of course, thriller, and of course some kind of like a haunted things. But some of them is put Gothic literature with using theme as woman as the victim. For example, for this work is if you ever watch I Spit on Your Grave, that is one of the Gothic literature um, that using women as victim as their themes. And I think that's all from me. Hope you guys enjoy it. And next, after this, we will discuss about one of the most popular novel and movie, of course. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you.
So our group picked the novel It, written by Stephen King, because uh, we know and we all agree that Stephen King is one of the most prominent figure in horror fiction works, and the novel itself have already received many nominations as also awards such as the British Fantasy Awards in 1987, and it is also listed as the best-selling hardcover fiction book back in 1986 in the United States, and also the novel has received many adaptations into a two-part miniseries, also in the television series which was released in 1998, and also the more recent one being the two parts movies by Andy Muschietti, which was released in 2017 and 2019. So basically, the novel It fits the bill of being a popular literature, and also the fact that the latest adaptation, the movie adaptation of the novel, is relatively fresh, and we believe that some, if not all of us, have already watched the two-part movies. It already serves as the basic knowledge in which can, we hope, can promote a heated discussion on this novel within this presentation.
The story started in the fall 1957 when the body of the 5-year-old Georgie Denbrough was found in the storm drain with his arm ripped off and the death as officially as an accident. And since his hand was caused by the recent flooding, the lasting Georgie sees in the form of the Pennywise is just a dancing clown, standing in the storm drain and hovering him backward at the balloon. And in the 1957 and 1958, it takes other children, some of whose bodies are uncovered, and his brother, Bill Denbrough, who was 11 years old, is trying to solve the mystery about the death and the missing children because he also feels responsible for his younger brother's death and tries to pay for. Also, he made his own paper boat for his brother that he were and where it caught him and killed him. Bill brought his friend named Eddie Kasperk and Stan Ulis. Told him they had a near-miss experience also with it. First one is Eddie tried to encounter it as a leper in an abandoned house in Explorer. Later on, Stan encountered it at a thrown party in the trees and pipes, as known as a water tower. Bill's friend, his friend named Chitosha does not tell Bill about his parents with it, which is the giant Paul Bunyan statue tried to attack him because his convinced of every episode is a dream. In the summer 1958, Bill makes new friends who also terrifying encounter with it. Named Beverly Mars, who is experienced when her sing was made a case of the blood coming from her bathroom scene. Ben also see it as a mummy crawling or the kind of run through the center of the town. Another one, like Mike Hanlon too, is a giant bird in the ruin in the Kitchener Ironworks site of just visiting 1906 explosions. The kids also see frequently upon the form of the clown calling himself a Pennywise as a dancing clown. Even when it appears in the form of the other monsters, it often retains the clown suit and the balloons. The story convinces children that it not a human but something else. The group of friends grow closer, calling themselves a loser club, and playing in the vacant wilderness outside the town called the Baron. In addition to their friendship, Ben has deep crush on Beverly, and Beverly and Bill develop strong crushes on each other. This triangle caused no conflict, but instead, all the Lucifers had been brought together for the purpose to kill it and save themselves while the kills like them. Also, the Lucifers group contend with the alternate evil that summer, and since Beverly Falls is kinda abusing and terrifying, Bill's parents neglect him because they are unable to contend with their grief. And about Georgie, Eddie's mother convinces him that he is sick with a severe asthma, but in other way, he's just fine. But the worst one is the losers are stalked by the bully named Henry Powers and his tourist Victor Chris, Patrick Hawksellers, and Bells Hawkins, who was assaulted. Each of the losers club members had become increasingly violent. Henry was special hated for Mike Hanlon because Mike is black. No racist, okay? Because of the two boys' father have a history of conflict for each other in each other's. This supernatural event first collided in early August 1958 when Andre and his gang chased the loser into the sewers tunnel under Derry in their hometown. The creature kills Victor and bears push in the boot in the sewers, but the loser find their way to its lair, where it's assumed the form of the giant spider with an equally giant web. Bill engages it in a supernatural ritual in the different metaphysical dimension. It attempts to flame Bill past the border of the known universe, but luckily Bill uses his imagination and believes in the good thing to injure the creature. The collapsing web traps the loser out of the lab before they can confirm it is dead. The creature, sorry. The the group get lost and begin to panic as they try to find way out of the sewers. Luckily, Beverly has an idea for having with each of the boys to reaffirm their love for one another and finally reunite the group. Her campers work in the group when the bonds is restored and finally find their way out. After they emerge independence, the losers wears a blood ought to return to theater if it starts killing kids again. When Harry Powers emerges from the sewers, disoriented and insane from seeing his friends die, he confesses and creature crimes and he's sent to an asylum. Eventually all the losers except Mike Handler move away from Derry and forget the event of 1950. And after that only Mike remembers anything about the creature itself. Back in 90 go forward in 1985, cycle of the episode 1 year before, in July 1984, the young Cameron was killed and the victim is named Archer Mellon. He is attacked by the group of the homophobic teenager who beat him severely and threw him into the Derry Canal at the end of the festival celebrating Canal anniversary. And the Pennywise as a dancing clown always in the canals and tried to kill Adrian by himself, who might have survived the beating, but the teenager are trying to convict for the murder but remain free awaiting appeal. 9 children are killed and go missing in the month following Adrian's murder back in July 1984. West becomes a several accountant and entrepreneur in distraught about the and after Adrian's murder and chief of police offered teen rationalization for each one, when a boy the mutilated body is found near the parent with this message and just come home, come home, come home. Scrawled in the blood on the nearby wall, Mike Handler makes the phone calls. He has been trading, asking the loser to come back to town. Other losers return to Derry except Stan himself. After Mike's calls, Stan, who has become successful accountant entrepreneur, is distraught about confronting the creature it again and commits suicide in his bedtime. The other losers who left Derry also have achieved success in their respective fields. Bruce is a best friend author, Ben is an internationally known architect, and Beverly is a French designer. Richie was America's most popular radio personalities, and he ran lucrative limo service in New York, and only make watch in Derry retains the modest lifestyle income. After they gave my score, the losers had forgotten their childhood and almost completely. As they make their way back in the reunite, emotional 1958 try to trickle back to them. After the meeting in the library in the night, after they return, the scars from their 1958 but was opened. They join hands and their memories are restored. They know their past made. In the meantime, it plots reference the It try to plan the revenge on the losers for the damage they inflict in 1958. The creatures helps Henry Powers escape from the asylum and leads Beverly, a abusive husband named Tom, to Terry. Henry attacks Mike in the library after the loser club nighttime meeting and almost kills him. When Henry goes after Eddie in the Eddie's hotel room, Eddie kills Henry. He calls Bill and Beverly, who have endorsed their childhood crush in one night stand, to help him, of course. Tom kidnaps Bill's wife, named Audra, who found Bill because he was worried about him. Tom takes her to a creature lake. After this attack to the losers, minus Spike goes into the sewer in the middle of the night, confront it for the last time. Confront it for the last time of their life. They find Tom's dead body, and see Audra hanging catatonic in the creature massive spider web. And also they discover the horror is back. Shocking. The losers repeat the ritual of the when they back in the 1958, but this time Richie joined Bill in the metaphysical plane, and together they're wounded, and Eddie dies when he attacks it to save Bill and Richie, but he helps return them to the physical world. This time Bill and Richie give chase and kill it by smashing the creature's heart. In the meantime, Ben destroys the egg it has laid before. After the creature dies and the layer begins to crumble, the loser barely escape in time, bringing Ultra catatonic body with them. When the losers emerge from the sewers, they discover a massive storm destroyed much of the dairy while they were killing the creature. Mike recovers from his wounds, the hospital, and the remaining losers return to their daily life anymore. Wes and Ben, who was loved by Beverly since childhood, began a relationship with her. Richie goes back to California. Each loser is can forget what happened with it, but this time Mike is forgetting it too, which makes it really is dead. Bill takes Audra for a ride for his childhood bicycle, Silver, which brings her out to a catatonic state. Okay, that's all for the summary of the novel, and thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Right now I have a presentation about our chosen novel, It by Stephen King, and my topic is about the intrinsic elements. Here we go. Okay, for the next intrinsic elements I will present to you is the synopsis. The synopsis is, it follows the story of 7 pretend children from the fictional town of Derry, Maine, who are stalked and terrorized by an evil eldritch entity they only know as it. The mysterious creature has the ability to easily shapeshift and disguise itself to its prey, and they use their greatest and deepest psychological fears against them. And one of its favorite disguises is the appearance of a circus clown called Pennywise. Because this novel, this is one of the popular novel by Stephen King, and this novel is also produced as a movie, and I think all of you have already watched it. The next intrinsic elements is the characters of this novel. So the first characters is it. It is a creature that lives in the sewers in the town of Derry and comes out of hibernation once every 27 years to feed on the children's soul. It's particularly latched onto Bill and taunts him with George's death. He encapsulates the most feared thing that individuals face. And the next is Bill Denbrook. Bill, also known as Big Hill, he is the most determined and resourceful of the losers Club. They call They, the losers member, called Bill as the Big Heel is to indicate their respect for him as their leader of this club. And next is George Denbrook. George is Bill's younger brother. And then Mike Hanlon. Mike is the last to join the losers. He lives a quiet life as the town librarian, collecting stories about their sordid history and the city association with it or the clown. His knowledge and watchfulness enabled the Losers Club to return to Derry after 27 years and finally kill it. And then Ben Hanscom. Ben, he was adopted Haystack by Richie. His building skills become useful to the Losers Club. Eddie Capstrack. Eddie, as an adult, he doesn't travel without an arsenal of over-the-counter medication. Although he finds out he has no real physical ailments, he continues to believe in his illness and the medicine to cure his illness. And the next is Beverly Mars. So Beverly is the only female in the group. Beverly loves her childhood friends deeply, especially Bill Denbrook. She uses her love for the losers to keep the group together when they are in danger of falling apart, and she is the one entrusted to fire the silver slugs at it. The next is Richie Tozier. Richie, known as Trashmouth, Richie is the loser's most light-hearted member. And then the next is Stan Uris. Also known as Stan the Man, Stan is the skeptical, bookish Jewish member of the group. And then there is Henry Bowers. Henry Bowers is one who is sadistic. He is the secondary antagonist of this novel. He is shown to be a young bully who is in particular harasses to Ben. He is highly violent and unpredictable, which makes him the perfect host for the clown to manipulate into killing people. And the next three, Victor Chris, Reginald Huggins, and Patrick Hochstetter, these three are the bully and members of Henry's sidekicks or the part of Henry's gang. Okay, so for the next intrinsic elements, I will explain about the plot of this novel. As usually, there are the introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and the resolution. For the introduction of this novel is when it kills Georgie Denbrook in 1957 and then kills many more people. For the rising action, and number 2 is when the Losers Club forms under Bill Denbrook leadership. Number 3, the Losers Club confront and injure it or the clown in its underground lair. The next, most of the losers leave Derry and forget their childhood. Number 5, the Losers Club return to Derry when it or the Pennywise clown resumes killing in 1985. And the last rising action is when the losers regain their memories and confront it again. The climax in this novel is when Bill Denbrook kills it after a magic ritual. And then the following action is a violent storm destroy most of the downtown Derry. And the resolution is when the surviving losers resume their lives and forget the past. Okay, that's for plot. And the next is the setting. So the novel takes place in Derry. So Derry is a town in Maine, New England in the northeastern United States of America. So that Derry has served as a nexus for paranormal, supernatural, and metaphysical events. Because also Stephen King's novels and short story is in Derry in or Derry, is a town in Maine, mostly known for being where his particular novel that we are talking right now, popular novel, this particular novel titled It. Because Derry is mostly famous for being the home of evil, shape-shifting entity that takes place in the shape of Pennywise, or the clown in the novel, the dancing clown, for this town has also been the setting for other novels and short story for Stephen King's works. Okay, so the next is, oh yeah, this is the last intrinsic elements that I will talk about, is the moral lessons. There are 3 points I made from this novel. So the first is, everyone is afraid of something. Yeah, in this novel, Pennywise the dancing clown preyed on the fears of the kids in the Losers Club. So we know that, of course, everyone have their own fear. Who is here doesn't have a fear? No one, right? Because this 3 point is connected or related. When the second one, the moral lesson, is fear makes the enemy stronger. So in this novel, Pennywise the dancing clown is a creature that feeds and thrives on its victims' fear, and it scares them by manifesting as their deepest fears. And on the flip side, once the kids of the Losers Club were no longer afraid of Pennywise, it became weak and powerless over them. And Bill even commented that it would starve to death. Why it starved to death? Because there is no more fear that the clown can gain from the Losers Club. And then when you're no longer fear of the enemy, that's when the tide begins to turn into your favor. Yeah, as what I have mentioned before, these 3 points is connected because the last point is the key of moral lessons, so that we have to try to overcome our fears. Okay, thank you guys. So that's my explanation for the intrinsic element of this novel. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Alright, so now let's discuss a bit about Stephen King's novel It. So basically, throughout the past few weeks, we all have already learned about that there are many ways in which we may use in approaching and also analyzing fiction. So basically, we would then try to reinforce this idea that horror, or to be precise, the element of horror within fictional works, deeply rooted in what often be referred to as the uncanny, or the uncanny tendencies, or the ordinary aspects, in which makes them all the more scary. So simply put, the more it resembles particular reality in which we live in, the more fear-inducing the horror fiction will be. So this is particularly true, especially within Stephen King's works, where its fear-inducing aspect of his fiction are a close resemblance of our reality. If I may quote Heidi Strangle, it is mentioned that while of course there are a lot of uses of monsters or supernatural entities of some sort, they cannot be treated as a mere excess, but also an agent of fear, in which King may discuss many different aspects, such as psychological fears, and also social and economic, and as well as political issues. I mean, basically, those who have read Stephen King's novel before, and also to some extent those who have familiarized themselves through film adaptations, and also the one who have been closely following the discussion on Carrie's novel Carrie in class, will know all too well on this matter. While keeping that in mind, so we try to trace the fear element within it by exploring possibilities exist within the sublime, or call it the external to the novel, if you may. So basically, while there are many aspects which we may analyze from the novel, we decided to go on exploring these two aspects, which is the notion of quote-unquote white male innocence, as well as hegemonic white male normative patriarchal society, which arguably are the most prevalent notions in every critique of Stephen King's novel It. These two notions, white male innocence and a normative patriarchal society, in retrospect creates and preserves the predominant ideology of the hegemonic masculinity. And this is even more so apparent after we try to look at the portrayal of the atomic members of the losers clubs within the novel. So you might want to ask a question, and actually an important question, and how could the children from the losers clubs, which you are already aware by the name it suggests, basically the ostracized group of people, the one who are usually treated as the other, and also subjected to constant act of violence from bullying, sexist and racial violence, can be the exact embodiment of masculinity. To answer this, first we can try to look at the very notion of the hegemonic masculinity. So basically, hegemonic masculinity, according to Raewyn Connell, is to be understood as the pattern of practice in which allows man's dominance to continue and embodies the current most honored way of being a man. So, and then we found out that Connell elaborate more on this and mentions that most men actually have established connection with hegemonic project, although they don't necessarily have or embody aspects of hegemonic masculinity. So basically, you can say that hegemonic masculinity doesn't really need to visibly embody its common characteristics known to signify masculinity. And later on, we also find an interesting notions proposed by Laurie Kendall. In one of her writings, she mentioned when analyzing the movie Revenge of the Nerds, she shows that the nerds are often associated with weakness, or being weak people, or being subject to subordinations, are indeed previously defined as the liminal masculine identity. So basically, the identity which is put on the threshold between the masculine as and also the feminine. But now there has been a major change in the position of this liminal identity, that it gets to be incorporated into the whole idea of the embodiment of hegemonic masculinity. So and even more interesting, according to Laurie Kendall, especially within fictional works, there are common use of other, mainly in the portrayal of female and also black characters, to assert the existence of hegemonic masculinity within the group of nerdy characters, which is you are already aware that this kind of thing coincidentally also apparent within the losers clubs, with the addition of the female Beverly Mars and also the black Mike Hanlon. But then another question arises. So how come we don't just try to see or analyze characters from the novel It, which are clearly the embodiment as well as active agents of hegemonic masculinity, such as Al Mars, the father of Beverly Mars, and as well as Butch Bowers and also Henry Bowers the bully. This is where the notion of the quote-unquote white male innocence comes into play. So basically, the idea of innocence is often associated with the lack of knowledge as well as the lack of guilt, which then would give the white male privilege to adopt what sociologist Charles Wright Mills calls as epistemology of ignorance. This epistemology of ignorance carries a really significant tendency in preserving hegemonic masculinity to subordination on sexual and also racial identity outside the predominant one. So basically it allows white male to assume innocence when faced with such accusation. So before, we all know that sexism, misogynism and racism always stems from complex ideological works permeating our society, and therefore we should always take the notion of power relations in regard to this matter. But epistemology of ignorance lets the predominant one, particularly in this case the white males, to shift the blame to something else, especially to sexism and racism as only individualistic product in a vacuum. So basically sidelining it into a mere matter of something in the lines of, well, it's only those people who do that, or something like not all males are like that, something an arguments which we often see or hear being thrown as a rebuttal to accusation of one being a racist or a sexist person, and instead of seeing these whole problems as a product of ideology. This is why there is an urgent need for a certain kind of distinctions. Like basically, on one hand, there is a visible hegemonic masculinity in the forms of abusive Boers and also Almars, the bad one, basically. And on the other hand, there is the innocent, redeemable hegemonic masculinity of the atomic members of the Losers Clubs. So basically, this inclusiveness of the Losers Club, the addition of the female Beverly and the Black Mike, actually becomes the proof of desire to undermine the complex problem of the masculine patriarchal society into a mere excess of misguided moral trajectory, while the actual idea is that they are both being used to grant the Losers Club, or basically the crime of ignorance, a pardon. And even worse, Beverly and Mike's own problems, which are arguably more press matters, like the problems of sexism and racism, and also in particular how they are being subjected to a constant abusive act, are often left out and considered as something trivial. And Beverly, in particular, is even more unfortunate, since she is being used as means to establish hegemonic masculinity by being the object of sexual captivation of the Losers Club. You can see in the novel that she becomes later on as a signifier of the losers or the nerds being able to transcend their liminal into a fully fledged masculine identity, and particularly shown in the gangbang scene after they defeat it, and also in the end the romantic involvement with Ben the Fatty in the novel. So as the final verdict, this isn't to say that we are trying to accuse Stephen King as promoting the idea of hegemonic masculinity, but rather we try to see it in a positive way, in the sense that we would like to see the novel It as the representation of our current patriarchal society, and the fact that this desire to reinstate total impunity over hegemonic masculinity is actually a real thing. So there are many examples of this. You can say that the ascendancy of Trump into president, or in a local sense, the legitimation of state violence on Papuans especially by us Indonesians, are the very outcome of this desire. And we should start taking this more seriously if we want to promote a substantially